Hi everyone, this is Arushi, just letting everyone know that we are live on YouTube.
Awesome. All right, Trisha, you can begin.
Okay, perfect. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Trisha Sakhuja-Walia. I'm the CEO. Oh, sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Trisha Sakhuja-Walia, and I'm the CEO at Brown Girl Mag. And I am super pumped to be moderating the annual Desai Foundation's Pledge Your Period panel. It truly is a beautiful full circle moment because a few years ago, Brown Girl and Desai Foundation hosted a really fun period party. And so this is just a good way to bring it all back. So I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. And so this panel is extremely important because it continues to be a space where we break the silence and we challenge the outdated narratives and we push for meaningful progress. And today we have a group of really, really esteemed panelists that I'm excited to speak to. Very first, we have Elissa Stein. Then we have Claire Coder. Then we have Karan Babbar. And we have Arthika Singh. And we have Pragya Gupta. Perfect. Welcome, you guys. And Megha, I know that you wanted to say a few words as well before we officially dive in.
Hi, guys. Yes, thank you so much, Trisha. And I'm so excited to be here with you to kick off Menstrual Health Hygiene Month and officially our Pledge Your Period panel. This is our 8th year of hosting Pledge Your Period. And what's been so incredible is that as the movement has grown, we realize that it's been much more of an inclusive movement. And we're super excited to welcome all of our bleeders, our non-bleeders, and everything in between to participate and take the pledge. I'm the president of the Desai Foundation. We're an organization that empowers women and girls through community programming to elevate health, livelihood, and menstrual equity across 8 states in India. We've just hit 10 million lives impacted and are really excited to celebrate that milestone. But most importantly, what we do a lot of is making sure that women have dignity. And there is so much of menstrual equity, period poverty, menstrual access that is wrapped up in dignity. And so it's one of the reasons why we feel very strongly about breaking the stigma, making it so that a girl doesn't have to hide or be in shame because she starts bleeding, making sure that girls have the information that they need when they start bleeding, making sure that no one feels like they have to choose between lunch and tampons. There are so many different issues around this thing, but ultimately, the reason why we care about menstruation is that it's not just about periods and girls and stains. It's actually about keeping girls in school. It's actually about keeping women in the workforce. It's actually about dignity. It's a GDP issue. So let's all work together and continue to have conversations like this. I'm so honored to have this esteemed panel join us, and I'm excited for you guys to take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Megha. Yeah, the work that you do, it's truly it's beyond impactful. So I appreciate it. Thank you for your 9 years of service on this. This year's panel, we're exploring how menstruation shame was created, which is really interesting to think about because in some parts of the world, especially in South India, your period is celebrated. So it's so interesting how in some parts of just India per se, it's so shamed. It's looked as so shameful. And I will never forget growing up. On Tuesdays, my family and I would always do a family prayer. And of course, on the Tuesdays that I had my period, my mom would just like come to me and be like very hush hush, like, don't come to prayer today. But like, I couldn't say it out loud. I couldn't say it to my dad. And I was just like awkwardly like sitting outside of the prayer room that we have in our house. It was just so weird and so awkward. And I took it upon myself over the last 10 years to be really vocal, just even with my own dad in our family group text to say, I have terrible cramps and I'm on my period. And to say that over the last 10 years, it was so tough, especially in the beginning. And I do have terrible cramps, and my family chat is active. So if I'm not sharing what's happening in my life, then what's the point of an active family group chat, you know? And so I'm glad I did that, but it was really, really hard to do that. So yeah, so I'm excited to be able to explore where the shame and how the shame was created, and then more than anything, how the shame manifests across cultures and systems. And that's why you guys are here, because we're going to dive in with each of you to talk about how you're dismantling it through your own work. So we'll dive in with Elissa Stein. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Our first panelist is Elissa Stein. She is the author of Flow, The Cultural Story of Menstruation, a fascinating dive into the way menstruation has been portrayed, or more often hidden, in media, advertising, and in pop culture. Recently, Elissa has been featured in the New York Times, NPR, The Washington Post, and her work invites us to challenge the very foundations of menstrual stigma. So, as your first question, Elissa, your book, of course, challenges so many ingrained cultural nuances and narratives about menstruation. Can you please talk to us about one myth or one misunderstanding about periods that you think still hasn't been properly debunked?
First of all, thank you guys so much for having me here and that lovely introduction. I'm so delighted anytime to talk about menstruation. I've said from the beginning of this project that the more we talk about it, the more that we can break down the walls that have been purposely constructed to keep menstruation secret and quiet and embarrassing, and something that is used as a form of control against leaders, which is a great way of talking about it. One thing that is so sad for me, after watching all the work that has been done since Flow came out, when I put Flow out into the world, 25 editors rejected it and said nobody wanted to have this conversation. Nobody was willing to take a chance. Like, it took me 15 years to get it out into the world, and finally somebody did, and it was a very difficult conversation to have anybody review or talk about it. And now the conversation is so much more open, but what still persists is the negativity. And that negativity is so systemic and ingrained in society and culture, because that's how it's always been. Whether it was religion, when I was doing deep dives into the Bible and the Quran and politics from 2,000 years ago, but also 100 years ago when women were fighting for the right to vote, menstruation was seen and portrayed as detrimental, negative. It rendered people who bled as inferior, incapable, too emotional to be able to make decisions or own property or do anything on their own. And they were shunted off to the side in a way that you were talking about, your mom encouraged you to not be a part of your family prayer circle. In ancient times and even today, menstruating people are not welcome in places of worship, at family dinner tables, in ways of participating in society. So even though the conversation has evolved and we are so much further along in equity for different people and keeping girls in school and working with women in prisons and shelters, there's still such a negative stigma about it that makes it hard to talk about. And when it's hard to talk about, it's hard to get the support and care and understanding that every single person deserves. When you're talking about dignity, that's a missing piece. That's always been a missing piece, because the world at large and culture as a whole has worked towards making menstruation a way of silencing and shaming.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's crazy to think that that is still the case today, because you're talking about centuries old work. So yeah. Speaking of which, you've had the opportunity to dig into media, from mid-century advertisements to current day movies. And of course, that's definitely played a role on how we think about menstruation, how we talk about menstruation. Where do you believe media and entertainment got it wrong? And do you feel like there's any places where it got it right?
That's a terrific question. A quick 2-second background about how this all came about. When products became available in like the 1920s, they had never been for sale before. And so a whole entire language was created to talk about menstruation to people who never talked about menstruation, and to take something that was so private and secretive and put it out into the world, but also maintain that secretive aspect of it while selling products. So the language that didn't exist before was created by product developers and manufacturers, men, to sell these products in a very unobtrusive way. And the language that was created was very negative. And the thing that I think that still sticks out the most, and I spent the past week looking at current products and advertising to see what has changed. The word protection. The word protection is everywhere. And the word protection, while yes, you're protecting your clothes from having an overflow, but protection connotes danger or fear, right? And so just the word protection on every ad, on every box, and every commercial is about something is going wrong. And we have to fix it, or we have to save you. It's like the other coming in and taking your own bodily function, which is a normal part of living in this world. It's what half the planet goes through. But it's been denoted as such a negative thing that we need to protect ourselves from. And then these manufacturers and product developers are saying, look, we'll be your best friend. We're going to help you through this journey. We'll help you keep your secret. We're going to protect you from your own blood. We're going to protect you from your own self. And that is still so prevalent. There's another language and another way that you can share these thoughts about what this product does that doesn't have to have such a message of inherent negativity and shame and embarrassment, because that's the piece that sells. And so when you reach out to somebody through a message of fear or discomfort or shame, you can sell your product better. And so that on some level hasn't changed at all.
Absolutely.
But getting it right, and I had to think hard about this. There's so much more information available.
Yeah.
When I was writing Flow, I came up with this idea because there was no information available. I couldn't ask questions. I didn't have anywhere to go. And now there are so many websites and resources, and now doctors are talking about it, and legislators are talking about it, and lawmakers are talking about it. And so for somebody who has a question about their period stopped, or their bleeding is irregular, or what can I try instead of this, you can go and research it. And so even though I'd say researching online, sometimes you need to take with a grain of salt. A lot of advertisers are the one who are producing content. And so that can be skewed towards that. But at least information is available for people who have questions or who are struggling in some way. Now there are ways that you can research and find information that can support you personally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for me personally, the first time I ever saw a Thinks ad in the subway, I think that for me was probably like a jaw dropping. I couldn't believe that there was, first of all, period panties, like super cool. Like probably the best thing since sliced bread, for me personally, has been period panties. And to see like these giant Thinks ads all across the subway and buses and so on and so forth, that was definitely a big, like, earth-shattering moment for me.
I remember they took over the Union Square subway station, and I walked in and didn't realize that they had mounted it yet. And there were just all these in-your-face photographs, and it wasn't gender specific.
Correct.
And that they included all different bodies and all different people in this was such an open message. And I could see that some people were so excited and some people were so uncomfortable. Like just having to look at these pictures and think about somebody talking about their period was just really, this moment. But again, just like this panel, talking and putting imagery out there and putting thoughts out there that make people think that perhaps how you feel isn't how you feel, it's how you've been conditioned to feel.
Absolutely.
And how do we change that? We change that by bringing things into the open and having discussion. And so maybe that can chip away at that discomfort, which isn't necessarily your own discomfort. It's just what you've been taught or what you've been absorbed by all the messages that you've been getting forever.
100%. And that took so much time and just your own personal discourse to understand that. And of course, I think having that period party with Megha, I think it was such a beautiful afternoon. We need to bring it back, Megha, because the stories that people were sharing. Oh, and we actually took it a step further because, periods are celebrated in many parts of Indian culture. So some women brought photos of their period parties, actually. So that was it was beautiful. So we're going to have to take this offline, and we're gonna have to celebrate really soon. So stay tuned for that. You guys hopefully will get an invite to a real period party. But okay, so Elissa, thank you for your time. We really appreciate your knowledge and the time that you've spent into debunking periods for all of us.
Thank you for
Claire,
having me.
yeah, Claire Coder is up next. Welcome, the founder and CEO of Aunt Flo, a social enterprise on a mission to make period products as common as toilet paper in public spaces. And that's a big deal. So thank you. Claire launched Aunt Flo at just 18 years old. And today she's recognized as a leader in menstrual equity, having worked with over 1,000 organizations from Google to schools and stadiums to make equitable and shame-free period products. And yeah, we're so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us. Your first question for today is, you've said, you want menstrual products to be as common as toilet paper, which I 100% agree with, and it should be freely available. Side note, it also should be tax-free, but hey, that's a whole nother topic for another day. Why do you think something so practical is still met with so much resistance?
Fabulous question, Trisha. I love that Elissa started us off because your book was published in 2009. Is that right? So from 2009, and I founded my company in 2016 in Ohio. So 7 years later, in
Right.
2016, there was still no policy around accessible period products in bathrooms in the United States. And I'm proud today in 2025 to say that 28 states now either require or fund schools to offer free period products. And we've been able to prove that by offering free period products in school bathrooms, not in the nurse's office, you go to the nurse when you're sick, not when you're having a natural bodily function, in the bathroom, increases attendance amongst girls. And so if we just think about the timeline to change, we have Elissa starting with publishing the incredible book Flo in 2009, and Flo starting 7 years later in 2016, and then 9 years later, here we are in 2025. It feels like it can take forever. And when you put that in a timeline, it's like, oh my gosh, why are we still talking about menstrual stigma? But in reality, it is actually quite exciting to see that from the start of Aunt Flo to today, now 28 states do have this policy. Now, we're not there completely, but just give us another 9 years and all of the advocates listening on this phone call, we will get to 50 states and a global movement. So I do think that this kind of dialogue is so critical. And my action for everyone is twofold. The first one is we can stop hiding our tampons up our sleeve when we go to the bathroom, or your pad down your bootleg, right? I have done this before when I was in middle school, right? So the first action that's no cost is just stop hiding your period product when you walk to the bathroom. And the next action that we can take is when we see products, period products available at no cost in a bathroom, thank the business owner. And it can be Aunt Flo's products or not. Regardless, say thank you. Because one of our biggest challenges when implementing Aunt Flo in organizations, and Trisha, you mentioned we're in over 1,000 customers, over 60,000 bathrooms, all 50 states, 3 countries have all implemented Aunt Flo period care solutions. So often we have customers saying, I don't really know how it's going because nobody's commented on it. And that's part of the stigma, right? Because when this benefit or program is introduced, if it's kombucha, people are like, God, I love my kombucha. This ping pong table is great. But yet we don't go to our facility manager and say, hey, thank you so much for implementing free period products. It saved the day. And so both of those action items that we can all take, everybody that's listening, there is no cost involved. It's a simple thank you, and it's a simple action that I believe will continue to advance the movement. So 9 years when we're having this panel from today, we can be celebrating that all 50 states have accessible period care. And there's so many more books in market around accessible or around menstruation. And Elissa obviously paved the way with that.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that, because 9 months ago, I opened up our first studio event space called BG Clubhouse in Nomad. And I haven't done this in a little bit, but I created like a cute little bathroom vanity. And of course I put tampons. And I promise you, every day I would count to see if there's less, because I was so excited about someone using my tampons.
And did ever anybody comment to you?
No, but it slowly, it decreased, and I filled it up a few times, and I genuinely haven't had the opportunity to fill it up again. So I will very soon. But you know, it's funny. I should put a little book there that says, write a message if you've used your tampon. And I feel like I can do that because like my space is the brown girl space, you know, so it kind of like makes sense. But I really am so tempted to do a little mini book, like
A little
write
share your
it
period
down.
story. How's it going,
Yes,
girl?
or that. Yes, if you use the tampon today, write your period story. Exactly. That's your payback for a free tampon, which are not cheap at all. I'm gonna have to reach out to you for some of those on flows, please, because I really want to fill up my bathroom again because I haven't had the chance. But you're so right in saying that, because I genuinely was so curious and I dead ass counted to be like, oh, someone used 2 yesterday, you know? So that's too funny. Okay, so of course you work with universities, you work with companies and stadiums. What patterns have you noticed when people are when people quickly say yes, or when they hesitate to, of course, you know, have period products in their bathrooms? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Certainly. So at a high level, AntFlow is stocked in over 150 universities, 7,000 schools, 28 of the Fortune 500 companies. So if you haven't found our bright coral AntFlow period products in a bathroom near you, keep your eyes peeled, because we are in so many bathrooms across the country. And we're in 60,000 today, but it is estimated there are 10 million female commercial bathrooms in the United States.
Wow.
So we're here, and we got to get all the way here. And when implementing a period care program, there are 2 core objections that we hear constantly.
Mm.
And the first one is, if it's offered for free, people are just going to steal them.
Right.
Right. And once again, we've designed our dispensers. We have a beautiful patented dispenser. It's industrial grade. It's designed to reduce overusage. It's kind of like Halloween candy. You know, if you put a bowl out, the whole bowl gets like poured into the pillowcase, where if you're giving one at a time, it reduces that overutilization. But overall, there are a ton of things that organizations offer at no cost in a bathroom. Toilet paper, soap, toilet seat covers, air care, water. Like, there are all of these things that have been consistently offered at no cost. And as far as I'm aware, there is no black market for tampons and pads. People taking some tampons and pads from Trisha, your studio, and trying to like sell them by the tampon.
That's where they were going.
Like that is not the case. And we've done tons of research to understand that generally it's about $5 per female employee per year. And some employees might take 1 or 2 because they don't know when they're going to need it another one. But the reality is there's not that kind of theft, especially with the AntFlow dispensing solution. So that's one of the myths that we debunk and the objections that we hear. And then the second objection that, once again, we need all of our listeners' help with is if we're pitching to an airport or a stadium, they have guest experience surveys. And if no one has ever commented on the lack of access to period care, it is not going to be one of their top priorities to implement. Because if you're the head of guest experience at an airport, you're just chipping away at this laundry list of people complaining about the air conditioning or the birds in the terminal or, you know, the food prices. Like, they're just chipping away one at a time at that list. And if accessible period care is never brought up in a comment, it will never be prioritized. And so it's all of our responsibility to also say, hey, I was flying through Portland's airport and noticed that there were no tampons. It really made a challenge for my day and my traveling. Or I was just seeing a concert and there wasn't any products and I had to leave the venue after I spent $1,000 on a ticket. Those small comments are listened to and acted on. And it'll make our job a lot easier when we're talking to the head of guest experience if we're able to actually say, yes, there are customers and patrons that have commented on this. And so those are some of the challenges that we face that I think over time will continue to adjust, and some easy actions that we can take to make that process easier.
Absolutely. No, I didn't even think of that. You're so right to remind us, because it's just something that you don't really ask for. Even when you're asking a friend for a tampon, which I've done many times, it's like very quietly and shyly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'll send them a text message, and it's so true. You don't even think about asking, because again, we're just so conditioned not to ask. We're conditioned to keep it a secret. So why would I write it down? Like that would be like not okay. So yeah, I appreciate the reminder. Thank you for the work that you're doing, Claire, and crossing fingers. You get a lot more yeses as opposed to naysayers. So thank you. Next, we have Karan Babbar. Welcome, Karan. Shifting now to policy and public health lens. Karan is a researcher and policy expert focused on menstrual hygiene, infrastructure, stigma in rural and underserved areas. His work examines the systematic forces that keeps menstruation hidden, and how governments and institutions can better respond to both physical and cultural needs around periods. So thank you for joining us. Your first question, Karan, is stigma doesn't look the same everywhere. Can you speak to us about the cross-cultural nuances that shape the way menstruation is understood and also misunderstood, especially across different regions?
Thank you for the question, Trisha. So I think stigma absolutely manifests differently, and understanding this diversity is the key to effective action. So cross-cultural norms could be rooted in tradition, religion, social structures, historical misinformation, we don't know. So today I'm lastly going to talk about three broader areas or three different examples, if that makes sense. And using these lenses, we'll try to understand how stigma manifests in a cross-cultural setting. So one could be stigma due to purity or pollution focus. So in some cultures, like even you were discussing, the concept of ritual purity is very strong, right? So menstruation can be associated with impurity. Some of the basic examples could be menstruating individuals might be barred from entering into kitchens, places of worship, touching certain foods, sleeping in the main house, not even sleeping in the main house. So these are like some of the very, very basic factors why it's happening. Now, it is not talking about the hygiene per se, but largely it's about the perceived spiritual or social contamination which is happening, again leading to exclusion and reinforces the idea that menstruation is there. So this is one way how we could look at it. Now there are some cultures where there's a lot of silence around menstruation. Like you guys were discussing, no one is going to talk about it. It's a deep, private, embarrassing bodily function that one doesn't want to acknowledge openly. A very small example could be about Whisper. Whisper is one of the very popular brands in India. Now, if you think about Whisper, what does Whisper mean? Why do we want to be shy about it? Why do we want to be quiet about it? So very important to understand the nuances and where it is largely coming out from. Third could be the lack of knowledge or fear. So now there have been very small studies. I'm sorry, I'm a researcher. I need to bring in some part of research. So there has been menstruation has been indirectly linked to witchcraft, illness, attracting negative spirits, beliefs that menstrual blood is dangerous. So all of these things are because of lack of understanding and are leading to fear, isolation, dangerous practices, which could certainly lead to poor health-seeking behavior in asking for genuine health issues. So now all of these things together, what largely I'm trying to say, addressing stigma is very important. And just addressing stigma is not good enough or is not enough. Largely, you need to tackle and understand the cultural context, which I was discussing in the starting as well. So some of the factors might be working out in one certain area, but could not be working out in the other area. And the larger reason for this is the contextual factor. So it's very important that we bring in the context into the play and try to understand how context is playing a role. Take those factors into account when we are challenging and when we are trying to address this particular stigma. So I think across the cultural context, I think it's very important that we first understand the context per se, then perhaps start talking about this position. That would be helpful in the statements.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Karan. And if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you a personal question. the work that you're doing is so important, but I'm assuming that you faced your own criticism and you've probably faced your own stigma with your own family and your own friends. Can you talk to us a little bit about that if you don't mind and how you've been able to work through it?
So actually, when I started working on it as a PhD student, and I wrote an article on it, it's called "Working on Menstruation as a Man." So there's a free. I'll
Mm,
be happy to share that.
I need to read
So
that. Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll definitely share that. So I was told, and it was a dirty topic to come with. I'm so sorry, like I got into Hindi, but then that was the literal meaning. Oh, he's working on a very dirty topic. So
Right.
this is what someone told me, one of my co-fellow PhD scholars. And in the starting, I was hearing about these things. I published an article in Lancet Public Health, and I was the first author. And I was told how a guy can be the first author. So these were like very common things that I started hearing in the starting. But I think it was important because perhaps it was the first time that someone was, or a man was talking about menstruation largely in the
Mm,
academic spaces. I'm sure a lot would have. It's just that I was out there openly talking about it. My
mm,
research topic was about it. I was writing opinion pieces about it. So there was at least some start of conversation. So clearly there was some sort of,
mm-hmm.
burnt towards the starting, but I think over a period of time, when people see this is your larger work, this is something genuinely that you're trying to do, then definitely they try to see that thing and it works in a way. So now at least I don't hear such things, but in the starting, it started like not from my family. I think they have been very supportive. I come from a family with a lot of feminine energy. My grandmother, my mother, my sisters, all of them has always inspired me to work in this particular area. And maybe
Mm,
they are one of the reasons why I'm working on this area. Because as a man, I mean, do not I do not menstruate, but I think this somehow connects me to the energy. And this is perhaps
mm.
my way of giving back to the society the larger love that I've received from them. So I hope it
No,
helps.
thank you, Karan. I appreciate that. I truly hope that more men like you can come do the work with us, right? Because it menstruation impacts both genders, but only we have to take the brunt of it. So truly, like I was, I'm in awe. So thank you, Karan. So you've said in the past that access isn't just about products. So what does a stigma-free, truly inclusive menstrual health infrastructure look like from a policy perspective, and how can such interventions incorporate economic viability as well?
Now that's a very big
Yes,
question.
very,
It
very loaded.
involves it involves a lot of factors. So I'll try to comprehend my answer. So just providing pads is not enough. So for example, if I provide you pads, is that enough? Do you need anything else? Maybe do you need a bathroom to change those period products? Maybe you need wash facilities to change the products as well as to take care of the overall menstrual health needs that you might have. So just providing products is not enough. So
Mm,
first, I think we should talk about comprehensive education to start with. So for all genders, starting as early as possible, we should cover biology, hygiene, socio-emotional aspects, dispelling myths, largely what we are trying to talk about today. Next is wash facilities. We need to have clean, private sanitation facilities with water, soap, appropriate
mm,
disposable options in school, workplaces, public spaces, wherever possible. Next, we talk about menstrual products. So, in India, the larger narrative is around sanitary pads. So, beyond sanitary pads, I think we need to provide women with bunch of, or basket of options that are available, be it tampons, cups, and let them know about the different options which are available and let them choose the product that they wanted to use. Right now, there's certainly the larger narrative around period products is, or larger narrative around sanitary pads is not enough. Women need to know about these different period products which are available for them and let them get the agency to choose the period product that they want to use.
mm,
Next is about healthcare access. So now there are trained professionals who can diagnose and treat menstrual disorders without stigma. Endometriosis, PCOS. These are like very normal terms which are coming out in public nowadays. But healthcare access, the right set of doctors who can treat them without any stigma is also equally important. As men, as other people in the house, I think providing a supportive social environment is equally very, very important. And this is how I would define a larger menstrual health or what menstrual health really entails. Now, talking from the policy perspective, uh, I certainly don't believe that creating only one policy or one larger policy will take care of everything because this is a multifaceted option. It is not being linked to just one part. So I'll give you a few examples. So first is education policy. Can we mandate comprehensive sexuality education that normalizes menstruation in the school curriculum? That's pretty important. Next, we need to train teachers. Now, when you look at policies, everyone talks about teachers. What about the non-teaching staff who are equally important in schools? Maybe reaching out to them, understanding their views and thoughts, and sensitizing them is equally enough to ensure that everyone is able to have a stigma-free menstruation. Next is wash policy. There has to be some national standards for MHH-friendly sanitation facilities in all the public institutions. Again, schools, government buildings, health clinic, private spaces, whatever we have available. We also need to include menstrual health screening and care into the primary healthcare packages, which it is not involving right now. Also, we need to include when we talk about these health policies and when we talk about MHM screening packages, that also needs to be included for trans individuals because they also menstruate along with the non-binary individuals who are generally taken out of these policies, which is not right and should be also taken care of. Next is fiscal policy. Can we please remove taxes on essential menstrual period products? So I'm not saying that every country has, some of the countries have started removing taxes, but still there are places where one has to pay tax on these essential period products. So it might be important that we start tackling this as a larger issue and perhaps remove taxes at least on the essential period products which are available. Next is workplace policy. Now, I am sure we have talked about workplace policy a bit, but we should have a menstrual health management or menstrual health hygiene supported workplaces, more of like flexible workplace options. And largely, even if it's not flexible, even if there is menstrual pain enough for women or for other individuals who menstruate, then there are doctors available, there is place available where one could be taken care. I think the next point is perhaps the most important point that you got on my work of. So that is data and accountability. We need to invest in research and data collection to understand the needs and track progress, hold institutions accountable for managing or for meeting these standards. Last, like I talked about, we really need to bring in inclusivity. It's about trans and non-binary individuals, people with disabilities, those in extreme poverty, refugees, people in jail. All of their needs also needs to be taken care into account when we are trying to develop a policy. So lastly, when we try to look at all of these policies, we are trying to look that as an investment, not as a cost. Because largely, like Megha discussed in the starting, we are making GDP out of it. When education increases, your workplace options increases, labor force opportunities increase. All of these things are likely to contribute to GDP. There is some anecdotal evidence that adequate menstrual health and hygiene leads to almost 2% increase in GDP, so that's quite important. So we also need to focus on boosting productivity, economic growth, gender equity. These are equally important mechanisms. Now the next part is how do we implement? How do we integrate it into the larger system? So first is we need to really bring in MHN into the existing budgets for health, education, WASH, gender equity. All of these things are very important and has to be integrated. We could have smart subsidies or tax policies. So one of the small options could be removing taxes for people who are making period products. So this could give them some kind of incentive to work on this particular issue or to work on making more affordable period products. Another one could be public-private partnerships. One of the basic ideas could be engage corporations, maybe via their CSR initiatives, to support wash infrastructure in schools and maybe provide product provisions. Uh, Next is supporting local economies. So one is you can remove taxes for people who are making products. Second could be investing in local social enterprises who are producing affordable and sustainable period products. Now, this is very important because the first one was largely talking on a larger perspective. Here, when we talk about these local social enterprises, maybe we are trying to talk about very small enterprises who are operating out of one or two or some multiple communities altogether. It's quite important to support these people because not only they are helping in increasing the period product usage, given that periods are a big stigma in larger social areas which are more rural or maybe who are not influent enough or who are high on social and gender norms. So in such situations, if we invest in these local social enterprises, or even if we can identify these enterprises, it might be very helpful. This will not only help in creating jobs, but will also help in reducing reliance on the imports and maybe largely focusing on the or tackling the larger menstrual health issues which people are facing in the rural areas. Lastly, we need to support some kind of innovation in low-cost, sustainable product design and disposable methods. Overall, I would like to conclude that achieving this is not easy. For me, it's very easy. I can sit and I can say, okay, we can do this, we can do that. But this requires a lot of political will, a multi-sectoral approach, which will involve government, civil societies, private sectors, communities, researchers. I think everyone really needs to come together and probably fight for this cause. More than fight, I think contribute towards this cause so one can menstruate very easily. I I was able to answer your question to some extent.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. We truly appreciate the detailedness of it all because it is truly such a complicated matter. So, and it doesn't need to be. So, thank you. We appreciate your time and the work that you're doing, Karan. And so, last but not least, we have Pragya. Thank you for joining us, Pragya. Pragya is the special projects manager for the Desai Foundation Trust, and where she designs and implements menstrual health programs across 8 states in India. Her work includes everything from supply chain coordination to rural outreach, ensuring that menstrual dignity isn't just a talking point, but a lived reality for thousands of women and girls. So, Pragya, we're so grateful to have you here today. Can you speak to us a little bit about working on the front lines of implementing menstrual health products in India, health programs in India? What are some of the less visible but incredibly important and impactful challenges you've seen when trying to reduce the stigma? And also, can you talk to us a little bit about how does the work that Desai Foundation do help women feel proud of their bodies and cycles?
Thank you so much for having me. What's invisible about menstruation is the stigma because it doesn't always look like cruelty. It often looks like love shaped by pain. And yet, women bleed, and anything related to blood has never been symbolized anything good for most of the people. So I would like to share this one incident. I'm from Uttar Pradesh, and I have this friend of mine there, and I visit Uttar Pradesh very often. Once a year, I definitely visit that place. So when I first met that person, she was so bold, she was so kind, and the kind of girl who would always bright the room. A year later, when I met her, and she was more mature, and we could talk. So I was 5 years older than her, and we could talk a lot about a lot of things because she was now in her teenage phase, and we also talked about period. What she said for period was, period means God doesn't love girls because if he did, why would he give us that? This girl think her body is punishment.
Mm.
And her mother had told her that girl have to lead difficult life, and that is how world works. And you know what? She said it not because to hurt her, but
Mm.
because no one had told her anything different.
Mm.
That's how stigma works. It's quite generational and built into system.
Right.
But at the Desai Foundation, we have learned to use the same system to break it.
Mm-hmm.
Families, communities, these women and children, we include them all. We don't just go in with pads.
Mm.
We are going in with a purpose. And we strongly believe that where money is exchanged, information is exchanged.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why we have built decentralized production unit, which is run by women. We
Mm-hmm.
have created 1,000 women leaders in communities who are distributing Asani sanitary napkins. These women who are in production unit are not making pads, and these women who are in community are not distributing pads.
Mm.
They're actually making and giving dignity to
Right.
themselves and to other women.
Yeah.
And we are not raising just awareness, we have raised voices of these women. And they are like, it's a cascading effect in their community.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One of my favorite recent story is of Shikha Mishra, one of our Sangri in Uttar Pradesh. And when she first joined, she was so shy that she could never hand a pad without whispering about periods. Fast forward, recently her daughter got period and her son was not aware and he was annoyed and he was not understanding what's going on with her sister. So she made them both sit and talk about periods with so much honesty and compassion. And if you meet this boy now, you'll see how positively he talk about menstruation and how much care he take of her sister, not with shame but with pride. This is my recent favorite because you can see how cycle of stigma is breaking. It is quiet in one kitchen by one woman who used to be afraid of even saying the word period. Along with these women, we are also building a future through our Bal Sanghi program. These Bal Sanghis are young girls in school and they are peer mentors. They support other girls during periods by advocating, by guiding them, and they are trying to create safer space for these girls. And I have seen 13-year-old girl support another girl during her first period with confidence. And personally, for me, it was not leadership. It was it was a whole cultural shift in motion, and it gives me immense pleasure. So that is how we at the Desai Foundation has been doing this for now years, and yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Before you know it, you're gonna have to come into just family parties out here in New York, and you're gonna have to do the same work because aunties can't say the word period anyways. So rural communities in India are going to be way more progressive than family parties here in New York very soon. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Okay, last question for the morning. How do you navigate the cultural sensitivities that come with talking about menstruation in areas where it's still considered taboo? And just want to quickly point out, we do have questions for the audience. So if you want to drop them into the chat, we will filter through them and ask them. Go ahead, Pragya.
So, uh, in many places that we work, like period, even saying the word period is too much.
Mm.
So I remember visiting a place in Rajasthan where I was trying to raise awareness about menstrual health. And when I was in the gathering, women would not even make eye contact with me. And the older women actually just got up and they walked away. So I was so embarrassed. But I realized something that day that when you have to lead something in community, you cannot go with facts and information. You have to lead with trust. If you have to navigate cultural sensitivity, means that understanding that taboo is not ignorance, and it is actually inherited trait that these women have kept it to themselves, and you have to feel it and you have to understand it yourself. So we start small. Whenever we are exploring new community, we start small. We start with a story or maybe humor. Sometimes we just talk about other programs other than menstruation. And when they are comfortable with us, when we have gained their trust, then we talk about it. The Sanginis who distribute pads in the community, they have been blessing to us because they are building comfort in the community. When other women see
Mhm.
someone like them speaking confidently about periods, something inside them definitely should.
Yeah.
Slowly, but definitely. And they begin to speak. When women feel respected and dignity, they feel dignity in their body, they begin to speak. And when they speak, the entire village listens. And we have seen so many uh, heartfelt stories from these communities that help us to keep moving forward, keep doing better.
Thank you, Pragya. We appreciate
I hope
that.
I've answered your question, Trisha.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the panelists. We appreciate your time this morning. And of course, more than anything, truly appreciate the time that you're spending on ground doing the work for all of us so that we can live our happily period lives. We're going to take just a few questions from the audience. The first question is for Elissa. So, Elissa, was there something you uncovered in your research that genuinely shocked or surprised you and has stuck with you till this day?
Two most shocking things. The first was how clearly organized religion denigrated menstruation, that it was in the Bible, and that you could just go read the Bible and read about menstruation was considered dirty and that women had to be ritually cleansed. And that blew my mind. And I researched and I reached out to like rabbis and priests and people about the Quran too, which had very similar language. And it turned out that yes, that absolutely was true. But those stigmas carry on today in certain sects of religion. So for Orthodox Jewish women, they have to go through a ritual bath every month. They can't have sex until they've been cleansed. They can't sleep in the same bed as their husband when they have their period. And so things that one would have thought had disappeared a long time ago are still in practice today as just a normal part of daily life for a sex of people. So that was the first one. And the second one was women's bodies were considered so dirty from menstruation that douching became a big thing, and women would douche with bleach and burn their insides, but it was advertised to women as a way of purifying yourself and getting rid of the dirty menstrual blood. And that way you would be more attractive to your husband. And so those two things that, religion was talking about menstruation being so dirty, you couldn't sit on the same seat or sit at the same table or travel in the same way with a woman in general, because she might have her period, but also that it was considered so dirty and unhygienic, women would have to damage their bodies to cleanse themselves, to just kind of get rid of it all.
Yeah, it's beyond. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Of course.
Pragya, this question's for you. As someone working directly on the ground with the Desai Foundation in India, can you share a story or moment that illustrates the impact?
So there are so many stories.
Right.
And also, again, like I shared during when I was sharing my thoughts. So another recent story was when a Sangini, so we have 1,000 Sanganis, and they also get a livelihood from distributing sanitary napkins. This livelihood, and this livelihood give them agents. So this Sangini in Karnataka, she was in a family. She got married off early and had to drop her education. When she became a Sangini, she actually rejoined her education, completed her education, and now she have even bought a scooty. So what scooty is actually a two-wheeler that you can ride around in the villages. And now she's not looking after one village, she's looking after 5 villages, as well as even living her dream. She bought herself a scooty, she completed her education, and she's actually inspiration, live inspiration for those women in her community, nearby community, to look up.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Pragya. And this question is for Karan or for anyone else who may want to chime in as well. How can boys and men meaningfully engage with discussions around period? And how can we make that just a normal day practice? Because I know even with my husband, who I've been with for 15 years, in the beginning it was weird, but now it's like we've obviously, cut that so many years ago. But it was tough. It was something that I had to really work on. I had to really mindfully say, hey, look, I'm on my period and it's terrible and it's miserable, so on and so forth, right? So a lot of that burden and work still falls on us, but it'd be so good to hear from you guys to share how can we make that burden less on us and more on perhaps the opposite gender.
So actually, I think one good way to answer is I can just answer in one line or maybe in
Sure.
one word. Just talk. Start talking about it.
Right.
I mean, that's how you start, right? So until unless you don't talk about it, you think, oh yeah, yeah, it's just their problem. If you start looking at it just like that, that's not right. I think let me remind everyone. Why do we menstruate? Is menstruate a big part why we all exist? Isn't it? Is not that how we should be start having this conversation? Is that not a big enough reason to maybe start having conversations about it? Maybe to start taking care of your other partner. So I think it's good enough to ask. In my family, my sister experienced terrible periods, so she doesn't even have to go out and tell. One can just simply see and understand. Very basic thing in that day would be, why don't you go to them? Why don't you ask them, do you need any food? Just help them out in very, very basic, simple manners. There are few things that one could also see and understand rather than not everything has to be, come out directly. Not everyone has to spell it out. So that's pretty important. And Trisha, I think you also mentioned a very important observation, which is open communication. I think until and unless we don't have that, I think boys can start having conversation about it. Boys can start talking about it. And once, a certain level of normalization has happened about this particular talk, then definitely the other part will also come together and they will also share their concerns. So I think communication, not just talking, would be one of the best ways how one can start talking about it and then take it ahead.
Absolutely. Anyone else would like to chime in on that one?
Even I would also like to add.
Yeah.
So, uh, we have a network of 1,000 women, and they have made that thing have made it easy. Money, when money exchange, information exchange, it actually stands for these women because in their family, I have seen they were not talking, but now their husband is supporting
Mm,
them to this. Their husband are talking with their friends about it. Very normal. And this was not very this is not very casual thing. It's something deep because it's shifting. And when same gender talk about period with same gender, it makes sense because you actually understand it. We have been also creating awareness for male beneficiaries in these communities, and it started, as I said, with trust. So we have been intervening in these communities for now like decades or so. So now they have trust on Desai Foundation, and whenever we bring something to them, we always try to not keep it very heavy, but just light enough for them to understand that, let's start with first. So today, you just need to know that menstruation is natural process that women go through. That's it. Just go with that. And
absolutely.
over the period, we'll talk more about it.
Right.
But let's just first break the ice.
Yeah, absolutely. And Claire, we have one last question for you. Do you think that we could see a perhaps bigger shift if we simply change Menstrual Hygiene Month to Menstrual Health Month? Does this shift perhaps create easier impact?
Fascinating. I actually am not sure that I'm the right person to answer this. I'm always interested in people's feedback on language. One of our big language shifts at Ant Flow was feminine hygiene to period care. So in 2016, we were one of the early companies that removed feminine hygiene from all of our branding and called the products what they are, period products, also menstrual products. But I don't know that I have a strong opinion on menstrual hygiene to menstrual health. Does anybody else have a vantage point on that?
Maybe
Hi,
Megha?
guys. I do. Yeah. First of all, I'm so grateful. This has been such a rich panel. I've been thinking a lot about language lately, especially in the kind of moment that we're in where um, language has been weaponized in a couple different ways. And so, the great Jennifer Weiss Wolf had termed this phrase menstrual equity because she felt it was a more accurate representation of the issues around menstruation. Karan did a good job of kind of outlining that there are like these 7 different kind of pockets of issues that surround this issue. And so, it was menstrual hygiene, And by the way, from a UN perspective, the issue was even bucketed inside of WASH, which is water and sanitation. So the issue of menstruation was put in that bucket. It was never put in the health bucket. Now, the intention behind putting it in water and sanitation was actually to protect it from folks that were trying to not give reproductive rights and other things. However, what it did was also create a little bit of a hard shell around it in terms of what the issues that we could attack were. So language is always important. And right now, after years of saying menstrual equity, we as a team at the Desai Foundation are thinking about shifting back to saying menstrual health so as not to ruffle feathers with the word equity. But it's so interesting to me because language is so important. Karan mentioned how the largest menstrual product in India is called Whisper, right? And what are the issues that surround that? And so language is important. But I think what's also important is being able to offer communities their language and have people control the language. And so I think if we think about whether, some people say that the word period is actually like a misogynistic word and whatnot. I think that language is interpreted in so many different ways. And I think what's powerful is ultimately what's at the root of the message. And as Pragya has given us so many brilliant examples of what the outcomes of that change really are. I'm keen to know in a corporate boardroom like Claire's in so many times, might language shift versus when you're in a village communicating with a young boy or a young girl. And so language is constantly going to ebb and flow. I think what's going to be really brilliant for us to see is how we can shift these outcomes, whether it's from Karan's perspective on policy, whether it's Claire's perspective on access, Pragya's on the ground, and Elissa's in terms of the academia of it all, and really understanding the journey. And so I'm just really grateful to have this brilliant conversation. Thank you guys so much. And thank you, Trisha, for
Yes.
Add
guiding
a
us
small
through.
point.
Thank you.
Can I add a small point to the question that you were making? So,
Yeah.
I just want to share something very, very basic from one of my research projects. Hopefully, it will be out soon. So, I think moving from menstrual hygiene to menstrual health is definitely very important. But I think we are looking at menstrual health and sexual and reproductive health as separately. But these are not separate issues. A very small example. We piloted on almost 200 women. We wanted to distribute free period products, free menstrual cups, like we put it. So now, before handling them menstrual cups, there was a simple test. So WHO comes up with a few symptoms. If you have any one of them, then you are classified as having a RTI or STI. Else you don't have. We did this, and we found that 40% of women, 40% of Indian women based out of a semi-urban area were having a RTI or STI symptom, and they were not even aware of that. That's a big deal. Now you can't go out and you can't distribute menstrual products or let's say a menstrual cup to them, right? Because of consent issues. So now, if we try to deal it separately as a hygiene issue, it will never work out well. We need to start taking a look at it as a health issue so that one could really understand and probably, bringing it along with the sexual and reproductive health issues because both are equally important and both are linked with one another. So it's very important that we start looking at it and more than hygiene, we start looking at it as a health issue. I think that would be very just gave a very small example from one of my very small work, which just tries to say why it needs to be linked back to health.
True. Absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate that, Karan. Thank you to all the panelists for your time and for your advocacy and for your work. And yes, we would love if everyone here can please pledge their period. Megha, if you want to speak a little bit about that and how Desai Foundation is going to be sharing our pledges throughout the month, and I'll be pledging as well.
Yeah. It's just an opportunity to kind of speak loud and proud about menstruation, say that you care about girls finishing school, you care about access, you care about period poverty, ultimately just breaking the stigma around periods. And so we encourage you to all take the pledge, visit pledgeyourperiod.com. You can see how you can just pick up a pledge that we've already made, or you can be creative and do a video and do your own post. We had a couple people tell their first period story. We had people talk about stigmas that impacted their own lives. And then, of course, we have a lot of celebrity friends that always join us. So it's a fun thing for us just to kind of keep going throughout the month as we celebrate menstruation.
Absolutely. Menstruation health, because I'm really into that as opposed to equity. Okay, well, thank you for your time, you guys.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good day, you guys.
Thank you,
Thank
guys. By the
you.
way, I've shared my article in the chat.
I
So you
saw.
guys can-
Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing, Karan. I'm going to check it out right now. I'm reading it.
no worries.
Have a
It's
good
good
day.
to you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye, Pragya. Very nice listening to you. Thank you so much.